Okay, so yeah, this I was just discussing change in evaluation pattern. I'll put it in a doc file in the shared Google Drive. Okay, so 6 marks for code. I mean hacker rank, 3 marks for Viva, and 1 mark for good coding practice. It's the usual thing. I mean, you need to comment out and so on. Code should be readable. That's all. Okay. So yeah, comment out each of. I mean, put comments on each of the major steps or function definition and so on. Okay. And yeah, so one thing we didn't discuss is like, so what if your program does not run? Okay. So in that case, as per the announced policy, you'll be getting 0. So we will not do that. So what we will do is we will, so in case if your program does not run, that is, it's not executable. Okay. If there is compilation error, we will give 0 mark. We will not be able to help. But if there is an error in the execution, but your program seems compiling and the logic seems good, I mean, it will again, while doing the Viva, TAs will be looking at your code. So up to maximum of 3 marks can be given. Okay. Yeah, out of the 6. I'll put that policy in the Google Drive. I'll share it to everyone. Okay, so just wanted to announce because you would have seen in the Moodle the change of pattern. So we have decided that 8 plus 2 could be a bit unfair, and also like if your program does not execute 0 could be unfair because you might have put effort, but there might be some problem. Okay, but compilation error you will have to rectify. Okay, you should learn to rectify. Okay. Yeah. So this, like I said, these slides are, yeah.
Sir, what will be asked in
Yeah.
Viva?
Somebody wanted to speak?
Sir?
So
So what
Viva,
will be
you
asked?
will be asked to explain your code. Okay. So it will, yeah. So you'll be asked to explain your code. So it's essential to ensure that, yeah, you haven't copied the code from elsewhere. That's all. That's a major thing. The purpose of Viva will be you have understood and written the program. That is all. Okay. Yeah. It will be maximum for 10 minutes per each student per lab. Okay. Yeah, so today we will discuss some concepts. I'll not really focus too much on the syntax, like I said in the last lecture. So we will discuss object-oriented concepts. We'll also demonstrate with the examples, I mean example codes. This is provided by Rupesh. Okay. So we'll start with the fundamental, what we call as, yeah, fundamental feature of C++, that is class. Okay. The corresponding objects are called object in the object-oriented paradigm. Okay. So essentially, a class is nothing but a data type, a user-defined data type, just like struct. If you have seen C, so I presume most of you have seen C. Okay, it's essential for this course. So struct is a data type, in fact, a user-defined data type. Okay, in fact, it's a inhomogeneous data type where you can have inside it several data types. So pretty much same is a class. So the keyword is class. You can see in this code here. Okay. Objects are nothing but instantiations of class, or nothing but objects are nothing but variables of class type. Okay. So there is an example here, class student. So it consists of strings. So string is in fact a library data type in C++. If you haven't seen, I request you to go check it out. Okay, so you have to include a string library. It has roll number. I mean, so two attributes are strings, roll number, name. If you also want address, you can also put address here additionally. Again, hostel, assuming that it is a hostel name, so it's in fact a string, a series of characters. Room number, assuming that it is an integer number. Some of the rooms could be labeled as A1 and so on, but we are assuming that it's an integer number, so it will be an integer variable. And assuming that each student also has a faculty advisor, so we'll have a separate class for it. So we'll call this as data type teacher. So teacher will be, so faculty advisor will be of type teacher. Okay. Now, what is feature additional to struct? Struct of C. Object, a class can also have member functions, not just member fields, but also member functions. So these are called member fields, which are of different data types, which themselves could be classes, okay, or any standard data type, int, char, float, etc. But we can also have methods or functions, okay. So for example, this function, it does not return any value. It's called change hostel. It takes a hostel name, and its purpose is to change the hostel to new hostel. Okay. So similarly, this function get faculty, it gets details of the faculty advisor. So the return type is going to be teacher. It's not exactly teacher. It will be returning a pointer to teacher. So let's ignore this specific aspect now. This is just an example here. Okay. So what we need to remember is a class is nothing but struct of C, but it also has capability of incorporating functions inside it. Okay. So data plus function. So this is data, this is function. Okay. Or in some nomenclature, these are called methods. Objects will have data as well as methods. Okay. Yeah. So the main purpose of class is data encapsulation. Okay. In general, it's called encapsulation. Okay. So that is putting data and functions together, or associated functions together. Or in other words, if you want to have a class student, you can put all attributes, that is data, which are relevant for student, for a student record. Plus you can also put functionalities, not only just change hostel or get faculty, maybe also you can also have additional attributes like marks, attendance, and so on. So you can also put update grade, or get grade, update attendance, get attendance, anything of that. Okay. Or get e-file. So yeah, so you can have methods. So one thing is they are identified together. That is a main feature. This is an essential feature in object-oriented programming. Okay. So this process is called encapsulation. Putting data and associated functions together is called encapsulation. So yeah, the experience says that encapsulation in fact improves programmer productivity, or software design and software efficiency is improved. Okay. So here one thing is it hides the implementation, the actual implementation. You can think in terms of objects. Once you define objects, you can think in terms of objects. Okay. Well, then you can ask, okay, so then so what is my program? So my program will be the traditional imperative program. There will be procedures, but you can see the interaction between the procedures through objects. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one quick question is, I mean, can somebody achieve encapsulation in C? Yeah, so this is another terminology you might have heard of. We'll come to that. Okay, so what is the difference between encapsulation and data hiding? Maybe in the next lecture or lecture after that, we'll see. Okay. So in fact, yeah. So now, okay, any questions so far? So Vishnu Vinod had a question. Sorry, I missed it. See, right now there is no such thing. Okay, so at a later stage, yeah, we'll be asking you to define the classes in a separate file. Okay, right now, no. So Viva will be taken the same week as the lab assignment. Okay. Yes, last submission. Jai Kamal. so see, this STL library, right? Yeah. So unless we ask specifically, no. So I think they have. See, you will be implementing sort. Okay. So right now you should not use any of that. Okay. Yeah. Many of those algorithms, procedures which are there in STL, you will be implementing. So then you should not be using them. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, unless you are explicitly asked you can use, then yes. Yeah, see, vector may not be needed right now, but like I said, right, most of these features, heap and all, you might be implementing. That's why, so don't use any of them unless we say you can use this. Okay, so yeah, so I'm unable to see any request. So ask them to join. So we'll see what happens. I am unable to see, I mean, I can't see any requests. Whatever I have seen, I've admitted people. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. So then this is a real restriction. Okay. So then we will have to see. Okay. So I'll try WebEx next time. Okay. So today we'll have to stick to this. WebEx is a bit slow on my system. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So I'll continue. So let's start with some of the practicalities or how to use a class. Okay. So I'm assuming that all of you would have already seen procedures for input and output in C++ using C out and C in streams. Okay. Yeah. If not, I request you all of you to get familiarize yourself with that. Yeah. So again, so just like C also comes with its own standard library. Most of the C libraries as well, they are also available in C++ because usually, at least if you are using a Linux system, C++ compilers are nothing but C compilers. Okay, so they also have features of C++. So yeah, if you have a CPP file, it will compile according to the C++ syntax. So only thing is, I mean, C++ syntax will have this class and additional features, also its own input-output library or yeah, additional STL library. Okay. Yeah. So in this example, so let's assume student class is defined this way. So then, so if assuming that you have defined it in student, what I'll do, the file called student. Or student.h. So all I do is I'll put this hash include student. Okay. So only difference is, so if you put this L angle R angle, it will automatically search in the standard lib folder, whereas here it will search in your local folder. Okay. So that's the only difference. So here this function, this program defines two student variables. Okay. Yeah. So suppose you just you have declared two student variables, but how do we initialize them? Okay. So most of you know how to initialize struct variables, right? So now we'll see how to initialize class variables or how to instantiate class. In fact, C++ comes with an interesting feature for doing that. But before that, let's understand one interesting point here. Suppose you type this program, so this file student called student contains this definition as well as you have this program, then you are likely to get an error. In fact, you will get an error. Okay, so it will say that roll number is not public and get facad is not public. Okay. So that is one of the important features of C++ class. Okay, so what it does is, so that is something called data hiding. So there was this terminology, right? Data hiding. So when you define a class, so C++ by default assumes that these are private data and private procedure. Okay. So what do you mean by private data and private procedure? So private data are those variables which can be only accessed inside a class. That means roll number. Now, because it's so I didn't define any qualification here. So the visibility feature, there is no visibility guideline here. So I could have said public or private or protected. So if in the lack of it, it will automatically assume that these are all private data. Okay. But then what happens here is when I say s1.roll number, so this private data is being accessed, data private to this class student s1, this object s1 is being accessed in the procedure main. So main is something outside of s1. Okay. So it will not let. For that, we'll have to declare this as public here. Similarly, I will have to declare this as these procedures as public. So by default, it assumes it as private. Okay. So yeah. So to get rid of this, so what I need to do is I'll have to say that this is public and this is public. So the keyword is public, all small, public colon. Okay. So this is again one important feature. Okay. And again, I want to point out something. Okay. So I said class is like struct. Okay. Now I recommend that you also try defining struct. Okay. So instead of class, so you create a separate file later on after the lecture. You use struct here. Now see what happens. So assuming that struct is the same as struct in C, it should give an error, right? Yeah. But the C++ implementers, they haven't designed it that way. It will not give an error. So struct behaves pretty much the same as class. The only difference is with respect to public, private. So in struct, all data and methods will be treated as public by default. In class, they will be treated as private by default. That's all. That's the only difference. So in particular, if you want all your data and methods or functions be public, you just declare struct. It has the same functionality as class. There is no difference. Okay, but except everything will be public. So if I define this as struct, then wrote this code and compile, I wouldn't have gotten any error, because by default all these will be public variables. All these methods will be public, so accessible by all every scope wherever the variables are available. So these are class variables here. S1 and S2 are class variables for us. Okay. Okay. So this is exactly what I said. So the 3 access permissions through the keywords public, private, and protected. Okay. Now, so when this check is enforced, it is enforced during compile time. Okay. So compiler itself will detect any such violation. So this violation error is compilation error. Okay. So the compiler is telling us that, okay, this access is not allowed here. Yeah. So the main feature here is it's basically security. Okay. In the sense that what it allows, along with the data along with the encapsulation, that is combining data and methods which are interrelated, it also gives you privacy. I mean, in the sense that this individual class, its data is not accessible if you declare it as private. Okay. So only a method, you can call a method, of course, provided it is declared public. You can, so if I declare this as public, I could access this. But typically, it is advised to keep the data private unless you want a globally accessible data or whatever. Okay. So yeah, that's again based on requirement and so on. but it's a feature which can be used to, I wouldn't say, yeah, security or privacy, more privacy than security. Okay. Yeah, so these are the standard features about the necessity or usefulness of these. Okay, so let's go a bit more detail on this public, private, and protected. Okay. Yeah, so like I said in the second slide, so a class has two types of members, fields and methods. Okay. So now for each of them, so you can have three features: public, protected, and private. Let's call it as security features. Okay. So this is if you have handled files in Linux, this is like owner group. Sorry, this is like there are features, right? So what are these called? So okay. So if you, how many of you have used change mode, ch mode? Okay, very good. Some of you have, right? So there it basically you can give strings. So 111, 100. So this basically classifies into three groups. One is owner, one is group. Okay, group again, when you have a group of people, so students could be a group of people, or employees of the institute could be a group of people, and so on. Then public, outside the group. Okay, each of them you can give permissions. Okay, so read, what are the permissions? Read, write, and execute. These are the three permissions. Okay, so instead of, so you can see a similar property here. Okay, so there are three groups. One is class itself, its immediate children, what we call as inherited classes, and then rest of the world. Rest of the world, for example, in this case, main is rest of the world. There is no inherited class here. We haven't declared. We will see that in the next lecture. Okay. So yeah, so now we'll see the accessibility. Okay. So if a data or method is public, then it is accessible to everyone. That is class, that is any object if you define, it is accessible there. All of its children, that is through inheritance, we'll see that later, and anywhere else in the C program. So within the scope, it should be visible. Okay, so I hope you are familiar with the scope of variables and so on. Okay, so if it is within the scope, it is visible. Now, if it is protected outside the class and its children, it is not visible. It's only visible to class itself and inherited classes. Okay. Now, if you declare it private, only the class can. So if you declare an object, only that particular object can access that particular data. So in the case of definition of student, now only procedures, only functions you have defined on it, they can access any of these if you didn't put this public here. Okay. Yeah. So these are important accessibility features or accessibility restrictions of three categories of data or methods. Okay. So public, protected, and private. And here, so we know what is class and rest. The children we'll see later. Okay. So when we talk about inheritance. Yeah. So this slide demonstrates it. Okay. So suppose we have defined a class just to know accessibility features. So here we have declared public. Okay. So there is a public variable, there is a public function. It just outputs in public function or in pub function. There is also check from class. Okay. So so one thing is, yeah. So in here, right, I could have as well defined the function body here. Okay. So C++ allows us to that. I could just declare and later on I can define the function body. We'll see how to do that. Okay. So I can as well define the function body. So the function body is defined here. So pub function, what it does is it just outputs. This is the function body. So similarly, this is the function body. It calls for pubfun once, twice, and then it calls pryfun, and then pubvar, provar, privar. Okay, so provar is defined in the protected region. So protected are int provar and int pro function. It again outputs in profun. Okay, so private are the variable private and the pri function. Okay, so now suppose I write a main function, that's a program, with a variable say AC as per the class access check, okay, of type access check. Now when I say AC.pubvar, it is visible, right? So public variable, it's visible to everywhere. So the main function comes in rest here, okay, it is visible, so this is fine. But when I say AC provar, it shows error. There will be a compilation error because it's a protected variable. Protected variables are visible only to the class and its children. Okay. Similarly, if I say AC.privar is some number, again the compiler will throw an error. So similarly, you can see AC.pub function visible, pro function error, pri function error. Okay. Yeah. So I just request you to get to your terminal after the lecture and type it and convince yourself. Okay. So here only thing I am not really getting into is this protected part. Will come soon. Yeah, maybe in the next lecture. Yeah. Okay, so this is, yeah, you can declare this derived class. I'll skip that. Okay, so when I talk inheritance, when I talk about defining derived class, okay. Yeah, so one more thing is, so as we have seen in two examples, so in the first one, we just declared the class without defining the function, but when we are going to call it, eventually we'll have to define the function, okay. It's again a design feature, okay. You can declare a class or define a class without really defining function bodies. So just like we did, okay. So you can have it elsewhere in another file. Only thing is when you execute, when you are going to make this call, the library to link it, I mean the link or the C++ linker, it will need the code somewhere in the, so somewhere accessible to the compiler, you should have defined the method as well or the function body as well. Okay, so we'll see that now here. So yeah, so we can separate interface from the implementation. Okay, so interface is the class, whereas implementation is the actual function body. Okay, so similar to declaration and definition. You would also seen in C, if you look at header files, right? All header files basically have declarations. They don't have function bodies. Yeah, how many of you have seen that? Okay, at least one. Okay, at least two. Yeah, so many a times it's a good programming practice to just do the declaration. Okay, so yeah, one quick question. So where do you think all these header files, I mean the corresponding functions are? Or have you tried compiling the header files? What was the problem? What happens? What kind of error do you get? Good, there are many S's. Anybody? Have you tried compiling the header function files? Okay, what if you include a main procedure there? Ah, okay. So there is one answer, linking error. Okay. So what happens is, so I mean, yeah, I assume all of you are familiar with. So C compiler or compilation process has multiple stages, right? One is parsing, that is, I mean, tokenizing and parsing, basically looking for syntax errors and so on. Then there is a linking phase where it generates object codes for each of your functions, okay, and then links them. So wherever you make a function call, actually the function body is not copied there. it's only linked. So there will be an address where this actual function object code will be stored, and you will be making an invocation to it. Okay. So that is called modular programming or whatever. So you will be reusing the code. You will not be copy pasting the code. Okay. So whenever I say a function call, so the linker will give an error because there is no object code of any of the functions in the header file. Okay. So header files only contain declarations. The advantage of this is, so compiling the header file along with the real code, right, for each of the functions that use printf or scanf and so on, every time it's going to be painful. So what they do is they precompile and keep it in the library. They're called link libraries. Okay. So there all object codes are there, pretty much like executable codes. Okay. Pretty much like executable codes of the functions will be there. So when you build large programs, it's a good practice to separate interface from the implementation, particularly for this reason. Okay, so because compiling each of the function every time, it's going to be painstaking. Okay, it could take a lot of time also. So this is again one design feature. So right now for all of your assignments, unless we state that you have to do this, so you can just do the usual way. You can write the function body inside the class itself. Okay, so that is right now it is fine. So later on we'll see. I mean, when we write larger codes, we'll insist on that. Yeah. So these are the features. So for example, math.h or string.h or stdio.h, all of them. Okay. So these are the corresponding object codes are stored in .so file. Okay, or even .a file. Okay. So they are basically compiled from original CPP files. But when you install in your system, you won't get a CPP file at all. You will get only these object codes. Okay, or I think usually they are only object codes, not executable codes. Okay. Yeah. So this is a demonstration again. So declaration, you just declare only this way. So this is implementation here, but you have only declaration here. Okay. So yeah, so you can separate them in this way. So here you can just declare the variables and the functions, no definition of the function in a probably separate file or in the same file elsewhere. You can just declare these functions. So how do we do that? So for that you have to define the scope. Okay, so this basically this 2 columns, right, or 4 dots arranged like a square here, they basically tell us scope. Okay, so this says we are defining the body of pub function, which is a member of class access check. Okay, so you could have seen this here, right? This is also scope. This says cout is a stream. In fact, it is a class object. It is from the scope std. Okay, std scope contains this, so that is why this is called qualifier. Okay, so yeah, so here I can define the functions. Okay, so pub function, then check from class, then access pro function and pri function. Okay, all of them, they can be declared elsewhere, they can be defined elsewhere. But only thing is, during the compilation time, whenever you are going to make a call, this code should be accessible so that it generates object code for each of them. Okay. Yeah, so one example is the client server model. So class functionality constitutes the server and its use defines the client. Okay, so that is one viewpoint that people usually take. Anyway, we don't have client server model here, I mean, for our purpose or any of our assignments. So let's ignore that for now. Maybe in future, when you develop bigger programs, you might be able to appreciate this view. Okay. Yeah, again, what's the time? Yeah, time for a quick question so far. Yeah, you can either type in the message or you can talk. Okay, either is fine. If you talk, it is useful. I mean, in the sense that I don't have to repeat it, and those who are watching the recording later will see. but if you type, I'll read it. Okay. Okay, so if there are no questions, we'll go. Yeah, so we'll discuss one more important features of classes. Okay. Yeah, so we saw that class is a data type. Then you have to declare variables, which we call as objects. Okay. Now, instruct or any other data type, you have seen how to initialize, right? You'll have to put an equality or whatever. You'll have to explicitly initialize the data there. Okay. So C++ allows slightly advanced feature for instantiation or initializing the data in a class. Okay, it is called a class constructor. Okay, and C++ also allows the opposite of constructor, that is called destructor. Okay, so the purpose of constructor is it's typically to assign initial values to fields. And possibly if you need some dynamic memory allocation, then allocate resources. Okay. A destructor, it's particularly helpful if the constructor had made some dynamic allocation, or or elsewhere the class would have, some method of the class would have opened some file. Okay. So basically its purpose is like fclose, function close, or okay, so let's ignore that, this memory lock and unlock. The opposite of malloc, that is freeing the data. The counterparts in C++ are new and delete. We'll discuss the difference between them later. Okay, so yeah, typically it is advised that you use new and delete in place of malloc and free for their security features and yeah, other properties. Okay, basically it gives you structured data allocation. So yeah, constructor allows you to initialize the values or allocate memory resources. Destructor, if at all you have some cleanup to do, either closing a file or deleting the or freeing the memory allocated to the class, then do that. Okay. So now we'll see how to implement them. Okay. So the simplest way is, I mean, in fact, the only way is constructor is defined as a function with the same name as the class. Okay, so the class name is const destructor, that is constructor destructor. Okay, I just define a public method const dist with the same name as class. I can have any number of parameters as I want, or I can just have void here, no parameter at all. Okay, so here you can allocate. So this one basically, so there is str, yeah, so there is a string pointer variable ptr or a character pointer variable ptr. So you're allocating n characters, so new memory location with n characters. So let's ignore the syntax of this. It's basically allocating new memory. Okay. Memory. Okay. And the destructor, all you do is it's the same as constructor, except that you have this tilde here. This is the destructor. Okay. So here, because it allocated memory, it's just removing, freeing the memory. Okay. So this is the same as malloc in C, and this is the same as free in C. It just releases back to the operating system or whichever environment which has called this program. Okay. Yeah. So here it will, so for example, if you declare CD as an object of class type constant destination, construction destruction, or CONSTDST, and so you just say CD parenthesis 10. This will invoke the constructor with the parameter 10. Okay, it will invoke the constructor with parameter 10. So now what will happen? So PTR will be allocated a character array of length 10. It will be a string of length 10. Okay, so if you compile this file, say let's call this as file.cpp. If you do, say either you can do G++ or C++. Yeah, most of the Linux also works if you do GCC, but at least in my system, if I do GCC, it compiles only with respect to C syntax. Okay, it does not do with C++ syntax. So I would recommend using C++ or G++ in your Linux system. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, so this is entering outer scope. It entered the scope, so this is the scope. Okay, now once the scope of this variable is over, this constructor is called, and that is how it works. Okay, so constructor is called when you declare the variable with initial values or whatever. So if I had declared a constructor here without this parameter, then it will be just declared without this parameter. I mean, then I just declare it without this parameter. Okay, so then n will be undefined here. Okay, I cannot use n. I'll have to use some constant or some other value. Okay, so when this scope is ending, C++ will automatically call the destructor function. So you can see that. So once you're leaving the scope, this is in destructor, and once you left the scope, you're out of the scope. Okay, yeah. So the destructor is activated when the scope of the variable finishes. Constructor is activated. Both of them are called exactly once if they are defined. It's not necessary that you have to define a constructor as well as destructor, but if you happen to define for a class, they are called exactly once. Constructor is called when the variable is declared. Destructor is called when the scope of or the lifetime of the variable is over. Okay, so this is end of life. So you would have seen scoping rules in C. It's the same in C++ too. So if I put parenthesis, right, I can always create a new scope. Okay, open and close parenthesis, within that it's a new scope. Okay, so the scope of this variable ends here. So the lifetime of this variable is over. So then the destructor will be called at that point. Okay. Yeah, so some more issues about constructors. Okay, it's not necessary that you always define constructor. Okay, there is a default constructor. Okay, so default constructor is without any arguments. Yeah, the default constructor in fact does nothing as such. Okay, because yeah, assigning initial values and all, if you haven't specified, it won't do anything. But if you haven't defined any constructor, the default constructor is without any parameter. So let's say I have defined class student without any constructor, that we have used default constructor. So if I declare student s a variable with respect to the class s student, then the default constructor will be called. Now if we try to call student s with some string as a parameter, it will give compilation error because constructor which handles string as a parameter is not defined. Now if we define one constructor where it takes roll number as a parameter, okay, so then you will have to define it this way. Okay, it basically overrides the default constructor. So I cannot declare it this way at all. So the moment, so for example, if I had declared this class variable cd without 10, it would have given me error because so we have overridden the default constructor. The constructor has to have a parameter now. Okay. Yeah. So, but that is a bit problematic, right? In C itself, when you declare structure and so on, you may not initialize always. You might want to read it from read something from the user later on and then initialize. Okay. So then this is not really a handicap as such. What we can do is we can actually define multiple constructors. That's one of the important features of C++ called polymorphism. Okay, But only thing is I will have to define both of them. I'll have to define a constructor with a parameter as well as a constructor without a parameter. If I do that, then both are fine. I can initialize or invoke the default constructor. Okay. So what I can do is I can write another constructor here. What I'm allowed to do is I'll just do it here. I can write const dest, this thing, default constructor. So put cout default. So if I do this, then I can also do this declaration without 10 here, without calling for 10, without this parenthesis as well. I can just say const dest cd. That will invoke this constructor. So then the message here would be, instead of in const dest constructor, it will be default. Okay. So that is called, this feature of C++ is more generic. It's not only for constructors or destructors. It is called polymorphism. Okay. So the same name for the function, but different functionalities. These functionalities are distinguished with respect to parameter. Okay, they have to be distinguished with parameter. I cannot define two constructors with the same parameter. That will be ambiguous for C++. Okay. So here is, an example which will get us into trouble. So do you see why it is an ambiguous call to the constructor? So if you define it this way. So we have done something unusual compared to our C syntax, right? So here we have just declared a variable but assigned it a value 10. That means this constructor function is without any parameter. It does not need any parameter. The parameter is already set as 10. Okay. So in other words, so both are functioning like constructors without any argument. So that is why this is ambiguous. Okay. So each different constructor should have different number of arguments or different types of arguments. Okay. The signature for a function, the arguments or their arguments combined with their type is called signature of a function. So the signature of the function should be different. Okay. So again, request you as an offline exercise. So type this code as a part of some program with the main function and so on. Try different ways of this. Okay. So instead of int, maybe you can give float and then give int and see what happens and so on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So how much time I have? Okay, I'll take a few more minutes. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll take one or two questions if there is any. Yes, you are right. Vikram and Ravi Sirikumara. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we'll end with the one. Yeah, nice feature of C++. Okay, it's something which is also available in C, but not with respect to classes. Okay, so this is with respect to classes. Okay, so now for example, suppose you have the following scenario. So what happens is, like, when you define, say, let's say class AAA. Okay, so if you have a variable So this variable is instantiated every time you declare a new variable. Okay, so or this field is instantiated every time you declare a new variable, that is new object of the class type AAA. Okay. Now suppose what you want is you want to share some variable across all objects of the same class type. So this feature is made available through the qualifier called static. So I hope you remember static variables in C, right? So for example, if you declare a variable as static inside a function, okay, so the variable lives even after calls of the function. So if you call the function n times, the static variable will remain the same, in the sense that every update will be reflected. So that is, if I say static int n equal to 0, it will be initialized only once to 0 during the execution. Suppose every time, every call I value n, so after making say 100 calls, the value will be exactly 100. Okay, so I hope you remember this static variable. So in fact, with the same keyword as static, the C++ builders have incorporated this feature where if I declare this variable as static int, okay, now this variable xx will remain the same, will be accessible to all instantiations, and it will be like a shared variable with all instantiations. Okay, so these are called class variables. So this variable, if I had declared without the static qualifier, then it is basically a variable local to the object. They are private to the object. So if I declare two objects, let's say A and B, AXX and BXX are different variables. Okay. Whereas if I declare them as static, AXX and BXX are referring to the same variable. It has a single copy, and the interesting thing is, to access this variable, I don't even have to define an object at all. It will be accessible any point of time. Once you declare this class this way, I can always say aa.xx. It is accessible. So that is something very useful in many scenarios. Okay, so when you want objects of the same class type to share a variable, use static. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I said. So class variables exist even when no objects of the class exist. A static method can be invoked even when no objects of the class exist. So yeah, it's the same thing about methods. You can also have static functions. That means the function you just want to use them, even if when there is no object defined. Otherwise, so if I had declared any function here, right? Or if I had any function, so where is that example? That was one non-trivial example, right? Yeah. So these functions are accessible only when you declare an object of this type. Otherwise, they are not accessible. Okay. So that is a limitation here. So you have implemented this function, but if you don't want a variable of access check type or any other type, you can't access this function. But to make it accessible, you can declare it as static. Yeah. So then all I need to, how do I access it? I have to say access check, then two colons, then pub function. It will be accessible to us. Basically this way. So if I make a call this way, it will work. Yeah, that is just in case if you need a function independent of whether there is an object of that class exists or not, or if you want to make independent function, you can actually incorporate it that. But if the function has some relevance to the class, it can be inside that class. Okay, so this is again one important feature, useful feature. It may not, I mean, yeah, I would recommend not to declare every function as static and so on. There could be a scenario, maybe not in this assignment, but like I said, when you build user-oriented systems, you might need interfaces even when there is no object exists. Okay, so that is when this could be useful. Yeah. So there's again some important points. So yeah, so this is something we need to note. Okay. So if you think about it, I mean, this is the same thing to do. Okay. So if you have a static method, remember that it can be accessed even without an object, right? So that means it can use only static variables. It cannot use non-static variables, because non-static variables are relevant only if the object is, at least one object is defined. Okay, so that means objective variables cannot be used by a static method, but non-static method, it can use static as well as non-static, because it has access to non-static. A non-static method will be invoked only by an object, right? So that means it has access to the data fields of the object. So hence data fields which are non-static as well. Okay. Yeah, so this is again some things to note. Yeah, when you use malloc, we can use malloc for allocating memory to a class as well. You can use size of class name, but it won't invoke the constructor. Similarly, free does not. So that's the reason why we use new and delete, where they invoke the constructor and destructor. Okay. Only thing is, when you call new, it will invoke the constructor with the 0 arguments. Okay. Good. So that's all about the lecture today. I mean, I also wanted to discuss this inheritance, more than inheritance, polymorphism. Maybe I'll skip to the next lecture. So instead, I will be available for discussion. Those who have doubts, you can stay back. I'll be available for 30 or 45 minutes or even 1 full hour now. Okay, I'll be stopping the recording now. You can ask questions.